Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Republican Donald Trump declares victory in the U.S. presidential race. This after projections show him winning more than the required 270 electoral college votes. World leaders congratulate Donald Trump for winning the U.S. presidential election. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, are among some of the leaders to wish Trump. South Africa closes its busiest border crossing with neighboring Mozambique amid rising tensions. This as protests continue in Mozambique, weeks after the ruling Frelimo party returned to power in a contentious race. Algeria signs a defense agreement with India as the two countries deepen their cooperation. The agreement includes bilateral exercises and training. And Zimbabwe bans its police officers from using mobile phones on duty. This after two police officials were arrested after being caught taking bribes from automobile drivers. Hello and welcome. Now our top focus is on Kenya, one of the largest and strongest economies in East and Central Africa. It has stepped up its efforts to join Brics, a group of the world's emerging economies. Kenyan President William Ruto has approached China to gain support for the Brics membership. Li Shi, a top Chinese official, concluded an official visit to Kenya on Tuesday, and during the bilateral talks in Nairobi, President Ruto requested China's backing for Kenya's bid to join Brics. Originally founded as BRIC, the group expanded to become Brics in 2010 with South Africa's entry. The original members include Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. However, the group expanded this year to join more members. The new Brics members include Iran, the UAE and also the African nations of Ethiopia and Egypt. Saudi Arabia has accepted the invitation, but is yet to officially join the bloc. The group was established to bring together the world's most important developing countries, with an aim to challenge the political and economic power of the West. Now, the expanded Brics has a combined population of about 3.5 billion, or 45% of the world's inhabitants. Combined members' economies are worth more than $28.5 trillion, which is about 28% of the global economy. With Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE as members, Brics countries produce about 44% of the world's crude oil. During this year's Brics summit in the Russian city of Kazan, the members pledged to add 13 new partners, which include 3 more African nations, Algeria, Uganda and Nigeria. Russian President Putin had earlier said that around 34 nations have expressed interest to join the bloc. As more countries are considering joining Brics, experts in Kenya have been urging the Ruto government to follow suit for economic and trade benefits. They say the Brics members can enable the East African nation to create better markets for its agricultural products. Experts also say that the use of local currency should be increased to promote intra-Africa trade, and there needs to be a reduction in dependency on the US dollar. African nations are seeking alternatives to reduce dependency on lenders, like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. For years, multilateral lenders have had bad reputations in African countries for providing loans based on stringent conditions, which have disproportionately affected the poor. Now, Kenya, which is struggling under a massive $82 billion debt, has also criticized international lenders for unusually high interest rates. In order to meet the IMF's policy reform demands for a lending program, President Ruto proposed new tax hikes this year, which were later scrapped after they met a heavy public criticism and outrage. Massive anti-tax protests broke out in the country, which soon turned into a wider campaign against Ruto. Apart from financial benefits, some also point out the more inclusivity and political neutrality that Brics offers. Moreover, it can provide Kenya a platform for greater influence on the global stage. To discuss further on the prospects of Kenya joining Brics, we are being joined by Patrick Bond. He is a political economist who is joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Hello to you, Patrick.
Alyson, nice to be back with you. Thanks.
Great to have you. Now, what strategic advantages does Kenya hope to gain by joining the Brics group, and how might this impact its economic and diplomatic position, both regionally and globally?
Well, as you remember, the Kazan summit about 3 weeks ago in Russia had quite a few prospective Brics members, amongst which was not Kenya, but Uganda was admitted as a partner, along with Algeria and Nigeria, two very oil-rich countries. And Uganda will soon become an oil-rich country with Chinese National Overseas Oil Corporation and Total exporting once they get their pipeline in place. The other two being Ethiopia and Egypt. Now, South Africa normally would be the sort of arbiter of who joins from Africa, the way Russia did with nearly a half a dozen countries from its region, and China from Southeast Asia, 4 major countries, and then from Latin America, Brazil chose 2 smaller but left-wing countries, Bolivia and Cuba. Now, the dilemma is that, and India as well as a major force, of course, but the dilemma is, what do you really get out of it? You get potential access to the Brics New Development Bank, and they do have slightly lower interest rates. However, Ethiopia, having defaulted just before it joined Brics earlier this year, wouldn't be a logical member. Egypt already is. And these, by the way, partnerships aren't really full memberships. I think we'll only learn in Brazil next year, when Lula hosts the Brics, what partnership means and whether they're going to add new partners and what is the scaling up from being a partner to a member. So it's a bit unclear. I think it's prestige and it's a balancing act so that the West knows, well, we can't really count entirely on Kenya to be our friend unless we offer more benefits.
Right. And how significant is China's role in determining Kenya's potential accession to Brics? And what are the key interests or conditions that China might have in exchange for its support?
Well, I would guess that the Chinese are thinking they've got a large outstanding loan on their major Mombasa-Nairobi rail line that still is contested. The uprising that you had clips of, especially Gen Z, the youth, saying, well, we want a debt audit. We think there might have been some corruption in that loan. It was a deal that maybe didn't entirely make sense in the terms, double the cost is what some would say, because of all of the padding on that huge rail line, about 10% of Kenya's debt right there. So I suspect that the Beijing logic is, well, if we can entice the leaders of Kenya in, and don't forget, just the day before the uprising of Gen Z it was June 25th this year. The day before, Joe Biden, the US president, had offered William Ruto, the president, the Kenya NATO major ally status. That's a very important role that even South Africa doesn't have as sort of an ally of Washington. And I think, again, it's that balancing act to have a tug of war. That's relatively unique in Africa because there are too many, let's say, one-sided relationships. And I think this is an interesting balancing.
Right. And could Kenya's alignment with Brics, as you've touched on now, affect these existing relationships with the Western countries, particularly the US, in terms of trade and development aid? And how might this shift influence in economic policies?
Well, you've announced Donald Trump, I think, as the incoming president in January in the United States, and he'll be determining a great deal of those AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, trade relations with countries he really has very little regard for. He may give Kenya a break. It's not that important a relationship compared, say, to South Africa or Angola or Lesotho. But for Kenya, the potential there is that you could talk to Trump and say, well, like a very good relationship with Ruto, that the U.S. should keep a big presence. On the other hand, with Trump, you just never know what you're going to get, and his disdain for anything, African, has been made very clear, and his including European support, the economic partnership agreements, I think will be tested. This is a period we're entering of what ideologically can be called paleo-conservatism, a reactionary, let me call it, isolationist approach, and Europeans are also subject to those very pressures as their right wing also rises. Kenya's obviously trying to play it in different ways and probably continue to find ways to keep the populace down while these elites do these deals. I'm not sure it's going to, that the center can hold.
Right. Patrick, thank you very much for being with us on the show. As always, great to speak with you.
Thank you.
And for our next story, we shift our focus to Equatorial Guinea, a small nation on the west coast of Central Africa. The tiny nation is in shock due to a high-profile sex scandal that is now making headlines around the world. Over 400 sex tapes involving a high-ranking Equatorial Guinean civil servant are doing the rounds on social media. Now, the scandal surrounds Baltazar Ebang Ngonga, who is the director of the country's National Financial Investigation Agency. The official is also involved in a corruption row. During the probe, authorities found around 400 sex videos of him and multiple women on his computer. Some of these women include his brother's wife, the president's cousin and sister, the Director General of Police's wife, and the spouses of over 20 ministers. Now, Ngonga's office was the site of many of these sexual encounters. It is not clear if the sexual activities with the women were consensual or if any of the women had lodged formal complaints against him. Some reports say that these scenes were filmed with consent, and some of the videos were leaked on social media, prompting shock and outrage from the officials after they went viral. The sheer size and the profiles of the people involved has pushed the government into a panic mode. The government, led by President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, who has been ruling Equatorial Guinea since 1982, is now worried as the videos have denigrated the tiny Central African country's image. Ever since the videos went viral, the government has taken actions to curb their spread. The civil servant, Ebang Ngonga, has been suspended and the probe over the scandal is underway. Apart from Ngonga, the government said that all of those appearing in the sex tapes would also be suspended without providing names, while those responsible for securing the buildings in which these videos were allegedly filmed would be reprimanded for failing to do their jobs. The government has ordered a crackdown on sex in government offices. It has ordered new measures to prevent judiciary and ministry officials from engaging in illicit acts at work. These include installing security cameras in all offices, as well as stepping up security. Apart from this, authorities said that if medical examinations reveal that Ebang Ngonga was infected with a sexually transmitted disease, he would be prosecuted for an offence against public health. And lastly, the flow of internet has been severely disrupted in the country to curb the widespread sharing of the sex tapes. As per reports, these videos were first spread on WhatsApp groups before being posted to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and X. Ebang Ngonga, who serves in the finance ministry, is nicknamed Bello, which is Spanish for beautiful, on account of his good looks. The 54-year-old is a married father. He is the son of the current chairman of the Commission of the Central African Economic and Monetary Community. He is also related to the country's long-serving president. While such scandals involving politicians and high-profile officials have emerged before, this case in Equatorial Guinea is one of the biggest incidents to shake the world, and it puts another dent on the country's image, already suffering from high rates of poverty. And now shifting our focus to North Africa, where Sudan has once again accused neighbouring Chad of supplying arms in the conflict. Sudan's army-backed government has filed a complaint at the African Union, accusing Chad of supplying arms and mercenaries to the rebel militias, which reports suggest is likely a reference to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, that it has been battling in the North African country. According to reports, Sudan's Justice Minister, Mawia Osman, has said that the government filed the complaint with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and was demanding compensation from Chad. Sudan also accused the neighbouring country of providing arms to rebels, as well as causing harm to the Sudanese citizens. He also added that the army-backed government will present all of the relevant evidence to the authorities. Now, ever since April 2023, there has been a power struggle between the Sudanese army, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, led by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, who have been vying for control over territory. According to the United Nations, the conflict has led to over 20,000 lives being lost. Moreover, the conflict has created one of the world's largest displacement crises, with over 10 million people being displaced and parts of the country seeing extreme hunger or famine. The conflict has also seen several countries reportedly getting involved and taking sides, including Iran, the UAE, Russia, China, Serbia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Egypt and Turkey. Reports have found weapons linked to these countries present in Sudan. But this is not the first time that Sudan has accused Chad. The Sudanese authorities have previously charged that Chad was facilitating the delivery of weapons from the UAE to Sudan and channeling them to the RSF through its border. Now, to contextualize, Sudan and Chad share a 1,400-kilometre border. The army-backed government has also been accusing the RSF of involving foreign mercenaries and committing crimes against humanity in Sudan.
This militia, the Rapid Support Forces, engaged foreign mercenaries to seize power and undermine the transitional period, destroying public and private property and committing murder, rape, theft, and looting, practices that constitute crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. However, the Sudanese people and their armed forces are determined to preserve the Sudanese state and its institutions and defeat this scheme. Looking forward to an active role from various brotherly and friendly countries, stakeholders and specialists in the process of restoring the urban sector that has been affected by the systematic targeting by this militia.
Now, Chad has repeatedly denied these accusations, with the most recent dismissal being in October. The Central African country had then said it was not supporting any factions that were fighting on Sudanese territory. The country reiterated that it was in favor of peace. Chad is yet to respond to the complaint filed by Sudan at the African Union. It has taken in about 680,000 refugees from Sudan, which is more than any other country. The constant accusations between Sudan and Chad have also soured their diplomatic relations. In June, Sudan recalled its ambassador from Chad, and last year in December, Chad also declared 4 Sudanese diplomats as persona non grata. In retaliation, Sudan asked 3 Chadian diplomats to leave the country. But with the conflict intensifying in Sudan and relations becoming fraught between Sudan and Chad, the future of humanitarian aid has also been in question. The United Nations uses the UNDRE border, which is between Sudan and Chad, to deliver humanitarian aid to the people of Sudan. Now, Sudan had initially agreed to keep the crossing open for 3 months, a period set to expire on the 15th of November. Authorities in Khartoum are yet to decide whether to extend the arrangement or not. While the Sudan conflict worsens and the North African country continues to accuse Chad of meddling in the conflict, it is the people of Sudan who are continuing to bear the brunt from this chaos. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Our story today is from the Ivory Coast. Creches in the country have become the ultimate mom hack. Childcare centres are popping up everywhere, from fancy neighbourhoods to bustling markets. There are now 254 private creches and nurseries across the Ivory Coast. Moms can now have a few hours to themselves while their little ones learn to babble and build sandcastles. These childcare havens are helping moms return to work 1 diaper-free hour at a time. Here are all the details.
Let's be real. Whether it's a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, sometimes all they need is a break. Enter the humble creche, a magical place where children can run free but in a supervised learning environment. The African country of Ivory Coast is seeing a creche boom. If a person can afford it, then they can drop their little bundle of energy at one of the 254 private creches and nurseries in the country. 200 of them are up and running in Abidjan. The state is also in on the game with around 300 more affordable creches for the masses. That's nearly double from last year's count of 174. For moms, the creche is nothing short of a lifesaver.
It's mainly that it allows me to take a breather, get a bit of energy, and in the evening when it comes, I'm still in good shape. And well, for the moment, as I haven't started work, it's already helping me to put the house in order, to relax a bit and to know how I'm going to anticipate the things to come, because when she's here, it's difficult.
I prefer to put my child in a creche so that I can be more peaceful and more productive at work. I don't have to worry about what's going on at home and all that, because with nannies at home, parents, you don't trust them anymore. At school, at least you have some security, so you're more at peace.
According to a creche manager in Abidjan, these creches don't just help moms catch a break, they help them recharge emotionally and physically.
First of all, it relieves the parents, because in our system, the maids don't stay long, the children are insecure. There are maids who kidnap children, maids who hit children. And when a child stays at home all day, what does he learn?
The rise of creches in Ivory Coast is tied to the surge of women entering the job market. In 2022, a whopping 51% of Ivorian women were seeking employment. This is up from 46% the previous year. And while most of them are hustling in the informal sector, more and more are moving into salaried positions. And now, according to reports, more than 20% of formal businesses in the country are owned by women. Talk about running the world. But it's not just the corporate ladies who are benefiting. Market stall holders like popcorn sellers are also reaping the rewards. The market management so kindly opened a few years ago. For a modest fee, mothers can now focus on their work, knowing that their children are safely playing or at least not eating sand.
I sent my daughter here because where I sell, it's by the side of the road. So the child is playing, it's not safe. That's why I sent her here, so that they'd take her, and that's good for me. They're going to teach her to read and write. She's very alert, she talks a lot, she already knows things.
So what about the pricing, as nothing comes without it? Annual fees for private creches can soar as high as around $1,600, which is more than the minimum wage for an entire year. While at the one run by the market, parents have to pay an annual fee of $138. However, based on a person's income, these prices can be negotiated. The growing popularity of creches has also put the spotlight on the need for qualified childcare staff. Ivory Coast is tackling the challenge by churning out fresh, knowledgeable graduates from early childhood training programs.
I decided to put my son in a creche because at least here, he can be around other children. He can learn to develop himself and his social skills. But he can also learn other things like reading, writing, and other languages. Whereas at home, that's not necessarily possible because the nanny hasn't been trained for that.
So whether you're climbing the corporate ladder or trying to keep your house in order, creches are the unsung heroes of modern motherhood and fatherhood. They are more than just babysitting services. They are key to balancing career, family, and sanity. So the next time you drop your little one off, give that creche worker a high five. They're not just watching your kid, they're helping you run the world.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
But it's a completely different story on the betting market.
Elon Musk, the tech visionary who is backing Donald Trump.
In New York, the Dow Jones and Nasdaq dropped over 3%.
Joining Putin in flexing muscle is his dear friend Xi Jinping.
The U.S. law calls for a presidential poll to be held on the Tuesday.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
I like that.